Hello, everyone. This is Agile Minds Romanian 15th, or is it 16th? I don't know. Edition. It's February 2025, and we have Robert Briese with us for an enlightening session about scaling Scrum with less, right? And people are still joining, but feel free, Robert, to greet everyone, and let's kick in some warm-up activity if you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Very excited to be here. Yes, so I will introduce myself in a minute. I will let you first introduce yourself by joining the prepared Miro board. I hope you can open it. There is a check-in exercise just at the beginning on the left down side of the board. I would like for you to take a pin that is together with a name tag on top of it, draw it, put it on the location where you are right now, and so that I can see a bit where you're located.
Robert, I think we have to mention the password. I think the Miro board is under some password setting, so not sure if everyone can join it without the password. Yep. So should I type it in?
Yes, yes, please.
So guys, this is the password. I hope this is it, Robert. Yeah, it worked for us earlier, so it should be.
Or with less, it should be. Yeah, did it type it? I don't see it in the chat.
It's in the chat. I just sent it just to Florin, to everyone. Sorry. Yeah, this is it.
By the way, since we're recording, Robert, can you share the screen or?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me share my screen. I think it's better if you all just jump on Miro, but for now, I can just show you the exercise. Yeah, I see there is something wrong with once you drag it over. I put actually all this icons on the front, but still when I move it on I sent them.
They're going behind the map, right?
Yeah, they probably
Send the map to back.
I did. Okay, now it works. Yeah, now it works. Sorry for
I helped you out, but I cannot delete the where are you from the white one because the widget is locked. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
So it should work now.
So a lot of people joining from Romania. Who would have said? And there's someone from Slovakia. No, that pin moved. There's someone in Germany. Robert, is that you? Yeah,
That's me.
It is Robert. Where it's the northern side of Germany? Is it Dresden or?
It's Berlin.
It's Berlin. Okay.
It's Berlin. I think I put it maybe a bit too low, but yeah, it should be Berlin.
Yeah. And what else we have? We have someone very close to Romanian border, but it's in Moldova. Let's see if we spot who's there. A few people in Brasov, a few people in northern part of the country. Câmpiaturizii, Zalău, Cluj. Okay. Lucky guys, it's not snowing for you, right? In the southern part, the southeastern part of Romania, it's snowing quite heavily.
I think we didn't have this much snow in Bucharest for a very, very long time.
There is a pin, I think it's in Austria.
Yeah, looks like Austria and Czech Republic.
Czech Republic also. I wonder who that is.
It looks like I'm the furthest away right now. I'm actually from Bucharest, but I'm in Holland right now, Netherlands. So,
Peter, welcome.
hey, how are you, man?
Hi, Peter.
Nice.
Just met
Welcome.
Peter. Nice of you to join, Peter. Thanks.
Yeah, welcome.
Cool. So I think, yeah, this was for the beginning exercise. Thanks everyone for participating. And I got a picture where you're from. Yeah, maybe I quickly introduce myself before we go to the next exercise. And for that, I will share a slide just to give you some information about me. Okay, I think you should see it. So yeah, my name is Robert Briese. I'm actually born in Romania and I still speak some Romanian, even though I haven't been doing this for quite a long time. I've moved to Germany when I was 13 years old. I've lived in different countries, but most of my life in Germany. I've worked with multiple organizations. Most of my life I've been self-employed and worked, had different clients, and been in the area of agility, I would say, since 2011. Have done my first Agile implementation at SAP IT in 2011. I was lucky that I've experienced back then a small team that was doing continuous delivery. That was the time actually when the book by Jeff Humble came out about continuous delivery. It was very new topic back then, and it was amazing to see how you can actually fix a bug or create a new feature within 45 minutes in production. And I wanted to have this experience since then with every team I worked with, but even with large organization. And that's what led me to learn more about large-scale Scrum, or how we call it, LeSS. You see a couple of companies that I worked with, certification. In 2013, I've set up my company, Lean Sherpas, founded in Berlin, and we just do consulting and work with a lot of organizations who want to become more lean and adaptive. So much about me. Before I go to tell you more about LeSS, I would like you to have a couple of minutes to think about Scrum. And that on the board, I prepared an area. Let me show you where you can basically should write about what is the essence of Scrum for you. So what is the core behind Scrum? What makes it work in a complex environment? Just pick up a post-it from the left-hand side. I'll duplicate some more and move it on the right-hand side and write your name and then what do you think is the essence for you in Scrum? Okay. It could be just a couple of words. It could be a sentence, whatever you think about when you think about Scrum, or if someone asks you what is Scrum, what's the essence of Scrum? And thanks, Florin, for resharing the link. I think for everyone who joins lately, they will not see the chat. So you might need to do this a couple of times whenever there are new people joining.
I'll take care of it, Robert.
Cool. Let's take just 1 or 2 more minutes for people to write.
So Hardik put some answer in the chat, so we can copy that as well and put it on the Miro board.
You read my mind, Mihai.
And guys, thanks everyone. It's a huge crowd. I think with about 30 persons connected right now. Thank you all.
Amazing. Cool. So I will start already commenting, and I'll share my desktop just for everyone and also for the recording, so that you see what I'm talking about. I love the response, to be honest. We have fast change and adaptability. Obviously, they are mentioning about events like daily stand-up. We have, and I think also I saw somewhere retrospectives, deliver value in each sprint, small, nimble team, resolve complex challenges while reducing risk. So very good self-organization, autonomy, also care for people, collaboration, empirical approach to navigate complexity via transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So really, I love the answers, because yes, this is exactly what I was hoping for to see and expecting. This is what I also see as kind of the core, creating this empirical approach with transparency, inspection, and adaptation, and being able to change direction fast by learning. So maybe one thing that I haven't seen, but is also key here, is the ability to change by learning, and only there you can basically adapt and understand if you're going the right direction, if you have to move, and by that improving your process, but also your product. So this is a very key aspect of Scrum. And now I will switch to my PowerPoint and tell you what this has to do with LeSS. And actually, LeSS is an approach to show you to show how to do this, not with one team, but actually with multiple teams. How to do the core essence of Scrum with multiple teams. So a big difference between, this so-called scaling frameworks is that most of the scaling frameworks are doing Scrum on team level, but once they scale, they have the same complexity as they had before, usually. So it's multiple Scrum teams orchestrated by usually traditional approaches of managers and additional coordinators to get everything together. The idea in LeSS is basically to have multi-team Scrum, meaning everything that comes together is Scrum and is not Scrum at the bottom on team level and everything on top the same as it was before. That's a very important aspect of what makes out LeSS. And that's why we actually don't like to call it a scaling framework, but rather a descaling framework. We believe that if you want to introduce adaptability and a faster way to change directions, so be nimble as you are when you are a 5-person team, you need to reduce complexity within your organization and not introduce additional complexity with additional roles, with additional people who are coordinating or doing things. But you need to reduce complexity out, and even you need to share the responsibility of doing the work to the teams. This is what actually Scrum, and also you mentioned this on the board, made different, is that it was a self-managing teams and not a manager who managed the teams. So everyone is actually starting to manage, and you don't have any specific managers or coordinators who are coordinating within the team. And this is what happens basically in LeSS. We follow the same approach as we have in Scrum, and but apply it to multiple teams. So from the process itself, it's very, very similar to how it is in Scrum. You have one product owner, you have one product backlog, multiple teams, and you do sprint planning where the teams are choosing the work that they will be work on in the next sprint. Then you have a sprint planning 2 event where they are creating the sprint board. And then basically you have a sprint, while at the end of the sprint, both teams are implemented the work into one integratable product increment that will be shown at the end of the sprint to the stakeholders and will be used to learn if it's the right product that was built, or if they need to adapt direction and build something else. And we have team retrospectives, and there's only one additional event that was created to have this idea of Scrum applied to multiple teams, which is the overall retrospective, a retrospective that is done with all the teams, or usually in large organizations with representatives from each team. The key, and I think the most important aspect, is the fact that you actually don't have a product owner on team level, but you have only one product owner for the product. And this is not something new, actually. If you're familiar with Scrum, and if you read the Scrum Guide, this is something that is mentioned in the Scrum Guide itself, and it was there since the beginning. There is a statement that says, if Scrum teams become, so let's zoom a bit here more, if Scrum teams become too large, they should consider reorganizing themselves. And they should reorganize into multiple cohesive Scrum teams, each focused on the same product. Therefore, they should share the same product goal, product backlog, and product owner. And this is something that unfortunately is done completely different in most of the so-called scaling frameworks, because they usually, each team has their own product owner, and then there's a need to create maybe a chief product owner or something called differently on top, that try to orchestrate and coordinate this work. And then you end up with multiple Scrum teams that needs to be coordinated and integrated, instead of doing actually Scrum, where the coordination and integration is handed over to the teams. So this is a very important aspect. Now, this idea came to Craig Lahman and Bas Wode, 2 people that were in the Agile community for a very long time. Craig actually was invited to the Agile Manifesto meeting back then in 2001, but because of some client appointments was not able to join back then. But is very well known in these communities. And he wrote together with Bas while working on with a client in 2008 the book Scaling Lean and Agile Development, where they first introduce LeSS and the concept about large-scale Scrum in this book, and especially the principle behind large-scale Scrum. And then in 2010, they released a second book, which is much thicker, and it provides experiments they have learned while working with multiple clients, doing a lot of experiments. The book has more than 650 experiments that you can apply and you can try out in different regions like backlog management, testing, and offshore work and stuff like this. And then in 2016, then they released the third book called Large Scale Scrum, where they introduced the guides behind LeSS. So basically, most of the people understand when they speak about LeSS, just the rules and the events that I showed you on the first picture with the planning, the refinements, the overall retrospective, and so on. But actually, those are just a part of what we understand about LeSS. So in LeSS, we have the mentioned experiments. Then there are guides that are very helpful in many occasions to use them to understand how to apply the experiments and how to, for example, introduce LeSS. And then the core behind, besides the framework and the rules, are the principles. And the principles are extremely important. And this is something that most of the scaling framework don't have, or if they have, then they don't really explain how to use them, why are they from, and how the rules are actually based on these principles. So we understand that basically, if you want to resolve complexity in big organization and you want to get rid of too much complexity, you need to understand how to do it in a proper way, and it's good to have this these principles because you cannot just apply Scrum basically on a single team and ignore the rest of the organization. The organization lives with basically everyone part of it. So one of the important principles is systems thinking, which says that you have to consider basically the system behind the whole organization or behind one team. And what usually happens is, for example, and this is something that I see a lot in many organizations, you hired Scrum Master or Agile coaches to help you increase the efficiency of single teams. And usually this leads to a sub-optimized organization. So what I'm trying to say is by adding coaches that create high-performance team, if you have the wrong setup in your organization, for example, you have a front-end team, a back-end team, a database team, and you bring a coach and they manage that the back-end team is twice as fast as they were before, you're not improving the organization, but you actually will create an even a worse situation in your organization. Why is that? Because by them creating more back-end features, there will be a longer queue of having those items being implemented as a customer feature at the end. So it's a huge risk that if you don't consider the whole organization and the whole value stream, you might end up optimizing something locally on the cost of sub-optimizing the whole system. And this is very, very important and has to do with system thinking, with queuing theory specifically in this example. So it's very important that you don't just focus on processes, but on watching the whole organization, the whole system, and you understand that you don't just do retrospective just because it's there in Scrum or in LeSS. you have to understand why you're actually doing it, and everyone that is part of it understand the reasoning behind it. For example, empirical process control. And that's the same with any event that we have in Scrum or in LeSS, like daily. If people are just going to the daily and they just repeat the 3 questions, or they go through the board, but don't understand the actual reason behind why they're doing it, and this is where empirical process control comes in, then you will never have a successful implementation in your organization. So the principles are really the core that you should understand, and then try to apply your a set of core rules so that you have really an adaptable organization. And one more thing that before I go to explain you some cases where LeSS was actually used, is the so-called star model by Jay Gilbreth. He is actually one of the most recognized person in organization development. If you ever research organizational development, which is what we are doing as agile coaches when we work in organization, we develop teams, but also kind of the rest of the whole organization. He talks about the fact that any type of organizational change has an influence on 5 different factors that are all interrelated to each other. You have to have a strategy why you do a change. You have a structure, usually a hierarchy structure between people and teams and so on. You introduce processes with the organizational change, and then you have the people and the rewards. And those are very strongly interconnected with each other. And if you ever ask yourself why some organizational change, like introducing Scrum, Safe, or whatever has failed, is because mostly you have focused only on one of these factors, or maybe 2, but they are all very strong interrelated. So you might have a goal to achieve a faster time to market or adaptability, and you might think about, oh, let's introduce Scrum on team level. But if you keep your metric structures in place, single specialist roles with people that are doing just one thing and not adapting and changing what they're doing, if you have job-based positions and titles, and people who are only acting to their titles, like release manager or something like this, and those are the only one who are releasing, developing single specialists, it will never work. It will create a lot of problems, and it will create a huge mess up, and you will be mostly even worse than you were before. So when you introduce changes, it's very important that you look at all these aspects, introduce a structure, think about the structural change that you have to do so that you have, for example, self-managing teams and no additional hierarchies or roles. You have also people that are motivated and willing to learn new skills. And you have a reward model in place, a reward model that is tied to learning and create revenue for the organization, and that's not for just getting a higher salary and just being fixed on one skill. So this is very important, and unless we understand this, and that's why we encourage everyone to understand what is the goal of the LeSS rules, which are actually for improving the organization for adaptability at low costs. And we actually need to create all this structure in place, put the rewards and the people in place so that the process also fits to the changes that we are introducing. All right, so that's basically the theory about LeSS in a nutshell, and it's very, very fast. And I'm just trying to touch some and give you some ideas why was LeSS introduced in the first place. Are there any questions before I go to the case studies? Yeah,
I would shoot one question. So if
yeah.
someone was to start studying less, you indicated three books by the authors, Moss and Craig, right? Which one to start with?
Good question. I would suggest please start with the third book. So the
Third
one
book.
that I
Mhm.
yes, it's this one. Let me go back to that slide. Yes. This is the third book because all the knowledge that they understood about how to implement it, and what was missing in the first two books, they put in this book together. So if you start, please start with this one, then go to the first book, this one from 2008. And then the 2010 has a huge list of experiments that I encourage you to look at, especially in terms of testing, how to do real, acceptance test driven development, and all the technical excellence practices that we think are extremely important when you do agile development at large. So this is a very important aspect, and I will also mention it in a case study. You will never be successful with large scale Scrum or with any kind of agile approach at large if you're not considering technical excellences. So it's very important that basically all the teams are working strongly together and they are doing continuous integration, continuous delivery, and use test-driven development, test automation on all the stuff. It's almost impossible to be successful at large if you keep all the old work, all the old way of working. I usually compare this. Imagine you have to produce with a couple of teams a PowerPoint document. And if you work on Microsoft PowerPoint and every team works on their slides, and then at the end of the sprint, they put them together, they will have a lot of mess and a lot of problems instead of just working in online on Microsoft Office Online or in Google Slides. And at the same time, they can see what the other teams are working. It's a completely game changer. And this is something that you need to have when you do large scale product development, no matter if it's less safe or any other approach. If you don't have this technical excellence present, and it isn't just one aspect that I'm just touching here sideways, that is very important and the key part of LeSS. And there's a lot of experiments, even from 2010, and right now the book of knowledge is even bigger. You can also learn about it on less.works on the website.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Where does LeSS differ from Nexus then, the Nexus framework?
Very good question. Can I park this for the question at the end?
Sure.
I will answer it, but I think it's a good question to round up all the all like the experience and so on. So I'm very happy to answer this. But I would say let me for another maybe 10 minutes give you some or maybe a bit more some insights from companies that have doing less and what was the success part. And then you can ask me, also questions about what was the hard part and this kind of questions, how it differs from other approaches. So we have here an approach from a big software company from Germany that have been actually, I worked with a department that was responsible for a website, an e-commerce store. So the e-commerce store that we built was built by on a specific system called Hybris that the company bought a few years before, and they wanted to integrate on that system to create their e-commerce site. Also integrated with a lot of backend system like SAP ERP, SAP CRM, and so on. So the original setup, and I'm using here now some images from Unfix. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I've done some, some presentations for them also, like work with their pattern language. And I like to use these images to show the differences from the previous setup to the setup that we moved to a less company or a less product. So what we initially had, a couple of front-end teams, a back-end team, and then a separate UI UX team, a separate DevOps team, a testing team, and obviously a couple of managers. That was the initial setup that we had when I joined. And what we did after some research, some trainings with the teams involved and the management, we decided in order to have actual self-managing teams who can contribute to a goal, we had to get rid of this component team setups. And we dissolved the existing teams and created so-called feature teams or end-to-end teams. Product teams are called, there are different names for this, but at the end, in the team topologies, it's called value stream aligned teams. At the end, it's the same thing. You have a team that end to end can create a customer feature. So they do have some dependencies to each other, but not as previously. Well, in the previous model, like here, you had for one customer end-to-end feature, you might need to have an understanding of the design, the UI, and so on. You might have to implement some parts on the front end. So, for example, the green team, and also you have to implement something on the back end. So the violet team, and afterwards you have to deploy this. So you might and to test it. So you need to integrate with the blue team and the yellow team in order to deliver end-to-end feature. And this would create a lot of hassle and problems orchestrating for each feature who is doing what in the different team backlogs. So what we did and that we do in LeSS is basically we get rid of the original team setup and create new teams that now are in charge of taking one customer-centric feature and implement this end-to-end. So they have all the skills, and now we make sure that we have backend skills, front-end skills, we have UI, UX skills, testing skills in the teams. And then the teams are pulling one feature by one after the other, and they implement this while still being in touch with their respective colleagues and trying to keep some guide rules on how to work on specific components. So the initial teams might still have a community of practice, and this is what we see here in the back, like the backend forum, how it's called in Anfix. These are communities, customer experience community that regularly meet and create guidelines and also learn new skills, share insights within the different teams. But they are just a community, and the teams are now end-to-end. And we created 5 teams, and because they were in different location, and that was very important to us to have local teams that can meet and work regularly together. We had a team in Berlin, one in Poland, one in Ireland, and one in the US. And at the beginning, we still had product owners for each team, but I started to work with basically these product owners to have an aligned backlog, to have one backlog that all teams could pull from. I just challenged them. I asked them, will we be able, if you refine your items with your team, will you be able to deliver it for this big deadline that we had? And there was one event where this e-commerce store had to be presented. And I asked them, will you be able to deliver everything? And I said, yes, if we get more support from another team, then we will be able to deliver it. So there was a lot of constraints about the amount of work that was the teams were able to do. So by having everything orchestrated, and we did it with user story mapping at that point, so that before every planning, I asked all product owners to come together, do a user story map, show all the items that have been refined, and then really put a prioritization and create an order between all the features. This was very tough, and you can imagine there was a lot of heated discussion between the different product owners who all they have their goals, and usually led to an escalation. It led to escalation that went even up to the chief digital officer, who said, "Look, I don't have time for these decisions on this more important than this," and actually picked one of the product owners to do this job, to make the actually order the prioritization. And by that, what happened is that actually we only had one actual product owner that could be seen as part of the management, that was responsible for the actual product, the return of investment, and all the other so-called product owners stayed in the teams, and they helped the teams refine item and do the data analysis, business analyst job. So most of them stayed. There were a couple of people that were not so happy about losing their kind of official responsibility of owning a team, and they might have moved to other departments. But there were also many others that just stayed, and they liked to contribute as kind of a team member, and bring value to the organization. So this is how we basically get rid of multiple team product owners and have one product owner and one product backlog for the whole product. And in terms of events on how it worked, this is what I described before. And you will see also a more detailed picture. We also have an animation about this on our website. We just do Scrum, but with multiple teams. So as I mentioned before, we had one product backlog presented at the sprint planning. The teams picked which item they would work on. The teams have their independent daily Scrum. We had a common multi-team product backlog refinement, where all the teams then started doing refinement together. And we did a sprint review bazaar where actually we presented, or actually better, the stakeholders could review the product themselves, and discuss what to do next. And then, as I mentioned, team retrospectives and an overall retrospective over all the teams. So this was the setup. Now, one more example, and then we can go to questions, and I can share even more details. Was at BMW. I think it's the biggest LeSS implementation in Europe, or at least in Germany. There were over 35 teams when I was there, and I think even scaled to 100 later. When we worked on the autonomous drive platform. So in that case, when you have more than 8 teams, you usually cannot work with just one product owner for the whole product doing the prioritization. And this is the moment, and that's because this product owner is like usually with up to 8 teams, and not responsible, and this is very important. So the product owner is never responsible in Scrum for writing user stories or product backlog item. This should always be the job of the teams. And if you don't do it right now, and if you ask the product owner to do the writing of the items and explaining the items, you most probably do something wrong. And I ask you to revisit this and to rethink this, because at the end, this should be the job of your teams to understand, why the customer needs something and how they should implement this. The product owner might come with the vision and with the request, but the whole purpose of kind of, discussing user stories is by actually understanding why a customer might need something, and the teams may be providing different solution how to solve a problem. So you want always your teams to discuss the customer problems and ideas how to solve them. And that's why I showed you before, unless we do refinements with all the teams together and have an actual workshop where we discuss different aspects of implementing a solution that might solve customer problems. But even if the product doesn't spend time, writing product backlog items and clarifying this, she or he might still be the one responsible for prioritization. And this is when, with more than 8 teams, this comes very difficult because there are so many items in the backlog. So when you have usually more than 8, and sometimes maybe you can work with 9 or 10 teams, at some size, you might need to have a different granularity. And what we suggest to do is actually to split in so-called sub-products, or we call them in LeSS requirement areas. So at BMW, we had one product, which was the software for autonomous drive. So the software within the car that basically, reacted on how to drive the car. Actually, it was how we like to call it in LeSS, still a very small product definition, because at the end, the product is not just the software, but it's the whole car with the software, or even, the whole flagship of different type of cars with the software. But it was already a big transformation just to work with the department with over 100 teams that was just working on the software. So we didn't move to that level yet of integrating, seeing the product also on the hardware side with the teams that are building the car. And still, because there were so many teams involved, we had to kind of split in different requirement areas. So we had a requirement area that was focusing on the simulation software. And then we had a requirement area that was working on the urban drive features and the highway features. So what I'm trying to say is that one part of the backlog was related with only features that are needed when you drive on the highway. And one part of the backlog was related to features that are only needed when you are driving in the city. So we still had one backlog, but we had different filters, and you could see the features that are related to highway driving, the features, and those are customer-centric end-to-end features that are related to urban driving, highway driving, or maybe the simulation part. And we had product owners in each requirement area that were basically in charge of deciding which highway feature is more important, and another product owner that was deciding which urban drive feature is more important. And the responsibility of the product owner, compared to these area product owners that were just dealing with feature prioritization, was actually to think how to grow these areas and how to move the product forward. So maybe to dissolve the simulation cluster after some time, or the requirement area, to dissolve it once the simulation is good enough, and to use it into, and those people are moving to the different, feature areas. So this is how we worked. And again, we had one planning for each requirement area. We had, and I think, we have here this picture. So we had one product owner for the whole product, and this is the autonomous drive software. And then we have an area product owner for each of these major features that were kind of more than 4 teams working on them. And in each area, we have one planning, and we do basically standardless in each of these areas, but we still create one integrated product increment, and this is very important. So, a question, what's the best way to review a product in the sprint review that is related to autonomous drive? What's the best way to review this product?
Drive the car that uses it.
Exactly. Sit in the car and let yourself be driven. And this is what the product owner was doing every second week. So every sprint. Our sprint were 2 weeks, and every 2 weeks we had a new integrated product increment, which was created by additions from every team. And doesn't mean that every team necessarily had something that you can experience, but mostly at least a couple of teams have something that you could experience in the car. And this was integrated, and we could see the changes really on the highway, on the street. And there were a couple of cars that were driven by the software with a special pilot or driver. You had to have a special license to be able to react in case of a bug. And we did a review basically every 2 weeks while looking at the software. Valerian, you have a question?
Yeah. How have you synced all the plannings? You said each product owner of the feature had its
Yes.
own planning, yeah. But in the
Yes.
end, you will flash only one software on a car, yeah, which should contain a bit of every feature, yeah. So how were the plannings synced? Yeah.
So remember that with this setup that I showed you here, I think every team is independent, able to release a feature to production without having to integrate with any other team. So they might need to integrate in terms of architecture decision, design decision, whatever. There's a lot of and we do this integration through communities and actually just talking with each other. And when we see that something goes bad by integrating, and we integrate 10,000 times a day. So we see if something goes wrong. We don't work on long-term branches for a couple of days, but actually we do continuous integration, and we did their trunk-based development. So we integrated all the time, and we saw if something doesn't work. But at the end, every team was responsible for their features, and they could change anything in the code without asking another team anything else. So that's why planning was quite independent, but still it's a good question, because there is sometimes a need to understand, do we want to release this feature before that feature or that feature? And this is something that was discussed in the so-called PO team. So the product owners did a lot together in one meeting before the sprint planning with the actual product owners or the area product owners, and they quickly presented their sprint, like their backlog, basically. They're part of their backlog, their filtered backlog with the urban drive features, with the customer, with the
a pre-prioritization, you're saying. So
yes.
it was done a pre-prioritization and somehow the sequence. Yeah, this makes sense with this one and so on. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Good. Who's next? Bogdan?
No, I suppose it's Peter. I raised the hand for him. So Peter, I think you have the floor for the question.
So if I understand this correctly, it sounds a lot like the Spotify model in combination with DevOps.
Well, no, I mean, Spotify model is, sorry to say, but you do still have team product owners.
No.
And
I mean, the building, having teams built independently from each other, but
yes,
integrated. So you have
yes,
continual release, let's say the CI/CD pipeline,
yes.
and try to automate it as much as you can using DevOps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you definitely want to, and that's what I said before, it's not going to work if you keep your old school practices. You need to do continuous integration. And when I say continuous integration, is not just to have a server where you have your branch and you integrate after 3-4 days, but you do most probably trunk-based development. And by that, you have teams. Again, it's like this example that I said, you build a PowerPoint slide, but you build it in Google Slides, and you see directly who's changing, who's working on what, and you always have a running, releasable product that is automated, tested, and to go to production anytime, not just at the end of the sprint. So this is the approach. And then once you have done this, the whole coordinations between the teams gets very easy because you see when something doesn't work, or you even see when another team is working on the same components as you are working, and you really start talking. You really go there and you discuss how to do the change so that you don't break each other stuff. And by that is what I said before, you don't have any additional coordination anymore. The teams themselves do the whole coordination because they see who is just working on other stuff.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very welcome. So,
Robert, do you have time to take another question? I see Karsten added one in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying, look, this brings me actually to the end of my presentation, and I can go now to the questions. I have some more, some information about how to get in touch and learn more, but I'm very happy to answer more questions now.
Okay, if Piotr is fine, I see your hand raised. I will ask first the question from Karsten, who wrote it in the chat, and then you go next, if that's fine for you. I see the thumbs up. So did you have to apply a spice? It's Karsten's question.
Tell me more what you mean with spice. A spice?
A spice. Yeah, it's software development process. But yeah, maybe Karsten. Good question. Good question.
Sure, I can
Yeah.
can elaborate on this. So a spice is the automotive process to build cars, kind of. And since you talked about BMW, what's BMW?
Yeah.
I was thinking, were you involved in also this very rigid process and this release cycles and all this, regulated stuff, or were you free to apply agility how you wanted to?
No, as I said, we actually didn't touch the manufacturing part at all. This was only applied into the software development area of self-driving car. So we were not involved in any hardware development and anything related with car building, but just to the software part. And this, again, there are different approaches. There is the German approach used by BMW, Mercedes, and so on, where all the self-driving car is built by, actual code from developers that you can link back to, whenever there's a problem, to where's the bug and who created the bug and how can we fix it. And then there is, I guess, the US approach for Tesla and Google and so on, that is very much related on AI and machine-generated machine learning code, which we were not allowed to use in Germany because of the regulation, in order to make sure that basically those cars also can drive with that level of autonomy on the German highways. So no, we haven't used like any agile techniques for building cars or something like this.
Well, Agile, ASPICE is the opposite of Agile. Yeah, let me tell you
Okay.
that in automotive. So it's a standard which is up and running since 20 years, 20 something years. And at that time, agility was not on our table. Yeah. And definitely now the industry says this looks at this standard as a pain in the ass, not anymore a facilitator, you know. So it's strictly focused on quality, how the process is developed, the process of developing a product is developed. Yeah. So imagine everything on top of that. Yeah. It's a madness. And whoever is looking at automotive spice level 1 to 6, it's done.
To give you an idea, I think ASPICE standard is inspired from some CMMI. It's a branch out.
Exactly.
CMMI.
Yeah.
So if you imagine the level of rigor and artifacts and documentation, process documentation that's present in CMMI software development approaches, you can imagine similarly the ASPICE standard for it. And I know this from Valerian and his team, so thanks a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, we had some debates in Timișoara a couple of months ago, so yeah.
Okay, more questions.
You're on mute, Peter. Or we cannot hear you actually, because I see you unmuted now. Still the same, we still cannot hear you.
It's because of the headphones. Hello?
Now it's great.
Yeah, okay. So can we answer the question from the chat first? Because that will also lead to my question. So the question in the chat is, do you have like epics in the product backlog? So what is in fact in this product? What is the PBI there? How would you describe it?
Well, I mean, most of the questions to LeSS can be easily redirected to Scrum. So we will try to answer all the questions how you would answer them in Scrum. And this will like 90% is always like the answer how you do this in Scrum. So yes, I mean, in Scrum, you only actually usually talk about PBIs, product backlog items. And don't even mention, the Scrum guide doesn't mention epics, user stories. And there's a reason for that. It's because you actually can use whatever you want and any format that helps you, but it should not be restricted to some specific format. And user stories is a great format if you use it so that people understand that it's about a story and it's not about a specific format that you want the requirement to be written in, but it's about having someone who tells this. And you usually have smaller items and you also have bigger items that people like to call epics in a backlog. But the bigger items usually are not on top of the backlog, but they are very low in the backlog. So what we had is actually big items that were there in the backlogs that kind of references bigger things that we wanted to achieve. And we splitted them in smaller pieces so that we are able to already experiment and learn from it and keep these big items, some might call them epics, on the bottom of the backlog, while always trying to splitting and creating tangible customer items and implementing some new features that we can learn from and see them in the next sprint. So that would be the answer. Yes, we would have big items, but they will be usually on the bottom of the backlog, and we will always look at what is the most important thing. Think about an MVP or whatever that we can learn something from and release and see if we go in the right direction or not.
Thank you for this answer. Then I would like to continue with this, because what I imagine is every team just taking the PBIs from the backlogs, from the top of the backlog. So they switch. One is first team is taking first, then second team is taking second or third. So they taking it. And then they need to have some sprint goal because they need to have some flexibility. This is the point of having Scrum, that we just not finish all the PBIs that we take, but we have some flexibility in defining the sprint goal and then reaching it. And here I have a question, because is it like each of those teams have separate sprint goals that leads to maybe same product goal at the end, or there is a sprint goal defined for all the teams, which is the same, but then how do you connect it with the PBIs that the teams have? Like, I would like to ask about this connection, because team doesn't commit to all the PBIs that they take. They commit possibly to some sprint goal that they have. So how this goal management is happening in LeSS?
That's a very good and very difficult question to answer. You have to look on case by case fact. I think, in most of the cases that I saw, there is no one correct answer to that. So might be a sprint where you just want to have like a kind of a bigger MVP live, that this functionality we want to show to the customers and learn from it. And this might be something that goes for all the teams, and basically then you have a sprint goal for all the teams. Release this functionality, like this MVP, how far you can, so that we can learn from this. But you could also, in some cases, have sprint goals on team level. For the urban drive, we want to do this functionality. For this, we want to have this feature or whatever in a position that we can learn from it. So it might be for the area, it might be for the team, or for the whole product group. And it might change from one sprint to the other, actually. So that's why, unless we don't talk so much about sprint goals, but this doesn't mean that we don't encourage you to use it whenever you feel you can help the team by doing this and by going in the right direction. Because, as you say, they should never commit on something, because you never know. Maybe they can do a forecast, but also they should know that they should be, delivering to something. And then, as you say, like kind of committing to a goal it's okay, but never on a feature level, on a product backlog item level, but rather forecast. Okay, cool. Next question, Peter.
Yeah, that question about epics and Jira is actually this one. It came to me because Jira does something strange. When we talk about epics, we talk about larger things that need to be broken down in user stories before we can start using them, right? So the epics would be on the bottom of the backlog, most likely.
Yes.
Jira, they use epics as groupings.
Yeah.
So if you would do it that way, and then it's exactly what you, Robert, were mentioning as the different functionalities. So you could still have one big backlog with one big product owner, but it would have functionality sections in it, which we could call epics. And then you could put filters on your Jira environment, so you can only see the epics in a certain area. Interesting approach. The other one, which I just heard, if I may, about the sprint goal. Every team would have its own sprint goal, right? And the goal is not to deliver every product backlog item that they took, right? Because we are prioritizing, we're using Moscow principles, etc. But you have an overarching sprint goal. So you first need to create the overarching sprint goal so that the teams can take the items from that backlog to show what they can be working on. This is actually what Nexus does as a framework. And now I'll come back to my first question to you. Where does LeSS then differ from Nexus? Because the way I look at it right now, what you're explaining is that LeSS is actually an extension to what Nexus tried to do, or in other words, you could also say, first we had LeSS and then Scrum came with Nexus. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. If you look at the dates, Nexus came much, much later than than LeSS. Again, LeSS was first published in 2008. And Nexus came actually at the same time when the LeSS book was published. So it was in 2015.
Yep.
And some might say that it was a kind of a copy or a bad copy of LeSS. I cannot tell exactly what happened, and it's totally okay, to have different kind of ways approach. But the point is that yes, Nexus is very similar to LeSS, and if you understand LeSS, you most probably you have also good understanding of Nexus. There are just very few differences. One big difference is the fact that there is a special integration team in Nexus that we don't have in LeSS, because again, this would then make some people more important than others, being the one who are responsible for the integration, while in LeSS, you might have a community or a so-called integration team for a while and then get rid of it. But in Nexus, it's a core part. It's like you have people and they have a title and so on. So this is very important that you understand. You could have some additional concepts in LeSS even, but they are not part of the framework rules, because otherwise you would create this additional position, processes, complexity that we don't want to have.
Yep.
So this is a big difference. And I think from my perspective, the other very big difference is that for me, Nexus very much focuses on the processes part, the events, the artifact that we also have in LeSS. But we very much encourage you to do system thinking, to look at the principles, queuing theory, more with less, removing roles, and all the stuff that are besides just the rules and the processes. Because as I mentioned before, just introducing Nexus and adaptability, but not changing the organizational structure, not changing the people, it will completely not work. So this is for me the key difference. If you ask me what's the difference,
Now I'm a product owner, Scrum Master for different ways of agile working, and also Prince2 and ITIL. And over the years, I've been looking at how can I make traditional project management like Prince2 and also ITIL more agile, using approaches first as Scrum, and then I had a look at SAFe, and I said, no, that's a little bit too complex. I looked at Nexus and I said, interesting, but it has its limitations. You can only have 8 or 9 teams, and then you have an integration layer on top of it. Of course, you can have an integration layer, but then you have more and more overhead, and then you don't have any agile anymore. But trying to use an approach like LeSS within a Prince2 or an ITIL environment would be very interesting to look at, and I would gladly look at that with you if you're interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure. Valerian.
Yeah, 3 questions, but they are quite easy to answer. Pretty sure about that. First one, how the overall software development team dealt with the time pressure. Second, what level was achieved of autonomous driving with BMW? I'm curious because, does it really make sense to buy a car that fancy? And third one, how you defined success, for this project?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I would start with first, and I would say, especially for the first LeSS implementation that I showed you with the e-commerce store, implementing LeSS actually helped us to deal better with the pressure. So, because we understood that time is limited, it cannot be extended. And you have only this couple of months or sprints until that conference. So if you have already a deadline, and a lot of people are saying wrongly that if you have deadline, you cannot do agile. It's the opposite. You can better be, you're in a better position if you have this fast deadline that you can understand it and you can iterate. And if you work in Scrum or in LeSS, you actually always have a product increment, and you only have to decide, do I release it today or tomorrow? So what is missing so that I can release it like this. And you can always work with smaller increments to make it releasable for your deadline. So it's actually very helpful to work this way when you have time pressure, because you can always show kind of like what's the current status, and where will you have to, what do you have to do so that you get basically to that, to the next step. So that's number one.
Yeah.
I cannot say so much about. It slips my mind the current autonomy level drive, but there were. I mean, they have been improving, and I was there for 1.5 years with the organization,
Okay.
and it's a very, very huge change. So I have to look it up, and I can tell you. But I can tell you that this kind of organization transformation is something that in a traditional organization is very hard to achieve.
Yeah.
And usually what happens, and that's why we also have the Lean Sherpas logo, not just because we want to show you kind of like the mountains and where the Sherpas are living, but because the actual transformation has often many ups and many downs coming. It is not always like a straight things from going from here to there, everything is smoothly going forward, but there will be a lot of difficulties, problems that you will encounter on the way, and sometimes you might move and you might make one step and then go 2 steps backwards. And I think this is what also happened at the BMW LeSS implementation. You can read about it. There's a huge case study written by one of my colleagues, Konstantin Riebel, who now works with me in my company in Sherpas, and was a Scrum Master with the BMW. And he writes as a LeSS case study, but he writes also a lot about what didn't work. And you will see that because there were a lot of difficulties with the traditional way of thinking, the traditional way of management in this kind of organizations. A lot of things have improved, but also there was a lot of resistance. And I can tell you now, and I think it's fair to say that they are not doing LeSS anymore, and they moved to something that is much worse. And I will not say the word, but and this like some autonomies that happens within this kind of large organizations when there is pressure of changing, especially hierarchies within large organizations.
Okay, Robert. Understood. Yeah. And how did you define success on this assignment?
Yeah, very
You
good question.
personally, yeah, for you. Yeah, I mean, what
me-
drives you to take it?
For me personally, it's always about, obviously, ideally, I'm trying to help the organization to achieve their goal when I move and start working as a coach within a team or big organization. And I'm asking them, what is what's your definition of success? And then I'm trying to see how can I contribute there. But unfortunately, more often, I tend at the end to describe my success when I can see people sparkling with ideas of improving workspaces and work organizations. And even if they're not able to do that in the current organization, they move to other organizations and do the sparkle over. And this I've seen a lot of times that I've coached Scrum Master, product owners, other coaches that then struggled in their current setup to do actual big improvements, but moved to other organizations and actually had create a more human culture based on people living self-management and seeing much more purpose in the work that they're doing.
Okay, thank you.
More questions?
Just short one from me. If you were to pick 3 favorite principles of the LeSS principles, I know you covered already the part related to systems thinking, and I agree that there's a lot to learn from how to see the overall outcome of every improvement that you make, and some improvements may be even daunting to the overall response. But maybe other than that, if it's just the top 3 principles from your perspective, I know all of them are important, right, Robert? But you have to have favorites, right?
Yeah.
So don't elaborate too much, just mention 3.
Yeah, so as you said, system thinking is definitely on the top 3 list. I would include lean thinking, because also it includes queuing theory and other things. And whenever someone asks me what is the role of a manager in a LeSS organization, I guide them to books about Toyota Production System and lean thinking. And the third would be more with less. Really reduce complexity and understand that the more you reduce complexity, the more you reduce roles, the more you reduce processes and artifacts, the more you will be able to achieve. And seeing this is very hard to do. I think it's one of the hardest, but it's also amazing to see it applied and the results it brings.
This last one would include having a single product owner, right? Even for a large.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's simplifying rather than complicating.
Only 3 roles. Maybe you can add managers, but even without managers, you can work in an organization with 3 teams, 1 product owner, Scrum Master, maybe 3 at the beginning for 3 teams, or 2 or 1, and product developer. Just 3 roles for the whole organization. No extra titles and so on. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Robert.
Who's next? Peter?
Yep. If you look at more with less, that actually also comes from lean. It's called the Kaizen way of thinking. See, in the agile way of thinking is really saying, let's not focus on end products. Let's focus on building blocks, and let's make these building blocks as small as possible so they can be used as universally as possible anyway. Some building blocks we will never use. They will never be released, but we learned a lot from it. And that learning can be used somewhere else again.
Yeah.
So the whole mindset, let's say the whole agile way of thinking, whether it's Scrum or LeSS or whatever you want to use, is changing a mindset. The mindset is, let's not think in end products. Let's think in the smallest possible building blocks. Try to optimize them and then put them back together again. And then have a layer, like an integration layer, that sees to it that, well, whatever you want to have. If you want to have as an end result a car like Tesla, do that. If you want to build a rocket, go ahead. But build building blocks and see to it that you have enough building blocks, enough knowledge that you build up in your organization that you can do whatever you want very fast, much faster than your competition. From an organizational perspective, the only reason why you want to go agile is to be competitive. Yeah, and if all your competition is stupid, you just have to be a little bit better than stupid to compete. And if you look at the automobile industry in Germany, and I worked with the Volkswagen, the biggest problem there was they were working in a very traditional way. And the organization had to go agile because they had to build electric vehicles, etc. They didn't really know how to do it. So they took people from the factory, young managers, who were trained in the agile way of working. In the meantime, the organization, a new factory was built to do things agile, and then they had to go back into that new environment. So you had two difficulties. The people's mindset had to change, and the organizational mindset had to change, and they had to be aligned to each other. And the problem where they had was you could teach the people agile, but you could not change the organization in an agile way that quickly. So there was a lot of friction, just like you said, Robert. Changing a mindset, changing culture, that takes at least 3 to 5 years.
So that's a very good point, and that's why Craig Lahman has his own law of organizational change, and he says like one of the parts of it says that culture follows structure.
Mm-hmm.
So if you actually want, and this is not only for him, there's other people who also mentioned this, and the idea is that the best way to change and to introduce a new culture is not by telling people 10,000 times a day what agile means, but keeping the same structure and everything as it is right now, but actually creating a culture, like a structure in place that would immediately lead to a different type of thinking. What I'm saying is, if you suddenly don't call all the people in the team product developers, and you don't call them tester and designer and business analyst, but you call everyone product developers, you immediately introduce a culture of might still have your skills, but you are a product developer, you are not a tester. This changes radically the way how people perceive themselves if you call them tester or product developer with testing skills. And it makes them clear that they are actually need to do whatever it takes and maybe learn new skills and so on. So LeSS is very strict about that the best way to introduce a structure is actually putting a new culture is by actually putting a structure in place that helps them actually experience what agility and adaptability actually means. And the whole LeSS rules are designed that way that it creates this kind of culture. So it's a good comment. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Guys, we have to be mindful of the time as well. So maybe if it's one last question to take.
Is there one more question? Valerian, you see your hand. No. Okay, it's done. So then we're good. I think thanks very much. If you want to learn more about LeSS, please get in touch with me. I'm doing regularly courses. I'm also will be doing something in Romania in the middle of the year. So please get in touch, and even if not, I would be happy to get in touch with you and connect and also learn from your experience. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so keep in touch with Robert, and also let's share some feedback on the session tonight. I know Robert has a section in the middle with something prepared just to see how this event went, to learn from it.
Yes, so there on the Miro board, I have a section with feedback. I will open the other sections with some more pictures from what I showed, but you also have the slides and the recording. Would be nice to get some feedback, what you liked, what didn't work, and maybe also for you guys ideas for meetup, next meetup.
So how engaging this session was. A lot of questions and very provoking questions, I think. So thanks to the audience and everybody who raised questions. made a very good debating environment of the options to scale or to descale Scrum, what the differences are or different approaches. So quite nice to have everyone so engaged and see everyone participate. Maybe for next session to talk a little bit about what our next event will bring in March. Do we have something there?
Yeah, for March we are preparing a Lean Coffee event. So you can bring your topics and we love to discuss those ones and get insights and sharing experience about those topics.
Okay, and the date will be, I think, around the same time of the month or a bit earlier. It's March 12th?
March 12th.
12th? Okay, that's maybe just to check Wednesday night. So we'll get in touch again soon, guys. Again with the recording and all. We'll make some updates to the meetup event with a link to YouTube channel, and also post it on the LinkedIn on our group. And we're very happily inviting you all here to fill in a form to become speakers to this Agile Minds Romania sessions. I know Christina worked on a nice form to maybe we can have a link to anyone here wants to share and participate to one of the future sessions with a topic. You can just put in your idea for a talk or a workshop, and we can gladly help you bring your knowledge in, right? So whenever we have that, yeah, thank you, Christina. Yeah, we have a link in the chat for that. What else, guys? Looking a bit at the feedback, overall useful information, less introduction. There's some politics there. I'm not going to read it. Okay, some ideas for next meetups. Some badly or failed LeSS projects. How did some less successful implementations of LeSS work? Okay, and overall, we think it was a very nice experience. So thank you, Robert, once again, and thanks everyone. I'll be closing the recording session as well. See you soon.
Thank you very much.